Well, it's gonna be great.
Who do you think you're talking to like this? Don't you realize I'm a grandmother?
She's a different kind of person. Her beliefs are very strong. She's not ashamed to come right out and say, yeah, she believes in, you know, aliens and ghosts and all that sort of thing.
I think I've been a mystic since I was very young. I think I've always known if I could get into sync with what the destiny was I chose, I would be happy. I understood that unless I went as close to the bottom of my identity as I could get, I would inherit loneliness.
I just have this talent for falling in love with the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, how many guys were there?
3.
Shirley is basically a lot more interested in the world around her and her place in that world than she is just in acting and what's going on in front of the camera.
I think she brings on the quality of truth because the camera has trained the American actor to do that, because you can't get away with overacting or lies.
There's nothing phony about Shirley, and she conveys that as a performer, whether she dances, whether she writes a book, whether she has one-woman shows, or whatever. That's what she is, and that's what you get.
The one thing that you can be certain about with Shirley MacLaine is that she started kicking up her heels, and she will continue to kick up her heels, both as a person and as an artist.
I come from a middle-class Southern Mason-Dixon line Virginia family. But underneath that veneer was the desire to break out all the time. Dad was from a small town, Front Royal, Virginia. My mother was Canadian, and both wanted to, I think, express themselves in the theater or show business. Dad was a musician, played the violin and the drums, and told me on several occasions that he had always wished to run away and join a circus. Mother was a poetess. She read poetry very beautifully and read it all of our lives. So we had this sense of appreciation for beautiful language relating to expression through the face. So out of that environment and the stimulation of two parents who basically gave up their dreams and hopes to be anything in the theater, they gave it up to raise my brother and myself. And so I, for one anyway, I think went about fulfilling their dreams, and that's been most of my motivation during my adult life. Warren and I went to movies all the time. We went every single weekend. It was our formal entertainment education. We knew all the stars. My favorite stars were Alan Ladd, Rita Hayworth, for a period there, Maria Montez. And Warren loved Charles Boyer when he said, "Come with me to the Casbah." He was going around saying that in the house for days. I was born with very weak ankles, but when I was about 2.5, Mother sent me to ballet school. My basic philosophical and psychological discipline comes from my years in the ballet. I also developed very good posture and a sense of grace early on. I didn't go through that awkward teenage period. I would go every summer to study with the teachers at the ballet theater school and at American School of the Ballet. I was 5'7" on flat feet, so on point, I towered over whoever was partnering me. There was no one in the Western world besides an oak tree that could partner me with any success, and lift me too, by the way, because I'm not light. So I thought, no, this is not right for me. I'm not petite Pavlova or anything like that. I auditioned for a show and got in it, and I guess I was 16. The show was Oklahoma, and we did the subway circuit of Manhattan. and I got my experience of what it was like being in a Broadway show that summer. Rodgers and Hammerstein asked me to go to London and do the London company. My dad and mother both asked me if I would please continue with my education, and I went back and finished the next 2 years. And as soon as I graduated, I went to New York, and everything happened from there. But it was sort of like my destiny. I auditioned for Me and Juliet, got into the show. Everybody in those days had to sing and dance and at least know how to read some lines. Joan McCracken was the comedy star of the show. She was married to Bob Fosse at the time. And we used to see Bob Fosse lurking around the back of the theater smoking a cigarette, studying Joan, studying the rest of us. Well, Joan then started Wednesday and Saturday matinee acting classes, and anybody who wanted to come went. I never took an acting lesson except for those periods. Then they held auditions for Pajama Game, and I auditioned. They had brought Bob Fosse out from California, and Bobby was choreographing. And I guess they needed dancers who could be heard. I don't know. But they gave me the part. There was only 6 dancing slots, as they say, and all of those dancers had to sing.
First time I'd heard about Shirley MacLaine was from Alfred Hitchcock. It seemed that she was part of the chorus line in a play called Pajama Game. Hitchcock was in the audience the night that Carol Haney couldn't go on.
Even today, when I hear, hey there, you with the stars in your eyes, or I hear, psst, I get sick. I get sick. Oh, they said, well, Carol Haney is out. Something has happened, and someone by the name of Shirley MacLaine is going to go on for her. Well, they hissed and booed. They threw things at the stage. All I could think of was, I'm going to drop the hat in steam heat. I didn't think that I didn't know the part, that I didn't ever had a rehearsal with the singing. I didn't know what key I sang in. I had a typically limited dancer's point of view about the area in which I was well schooled, and that was dancing, and I was going to drop the hat in steam heat. Well, I threw the hat up in the air to catch it, and it was right in the spotlight. And I dropped the hat, and I said, oh, shit. And the first few rows heard me, even though it was under my breath, and they went, oh! And then I apologized. I said, oh, I'm sorry. And I picked up the hat and kept dancing. And I was ready to go to stage right, and the 2 guys peeled off and left me in the center of the stage. And the audience stood up and they gave me this standing ovation, and I felt lonely. I felt very lonely and unprepared. I had worked, of course, dancing since I was 2 for this moment, which was now 18 or 19. I didn't know what to do.
As it happened in true Hollywood style, a very big producer here at Paramount, Hal Wallace, was in the audience and saw this sassy, saucy, talented, sexy, beautiful Shirley MacLaine on the stage. After the show, he went back and offered her a Paramount contract.
I was put under contract to Hal Wallace, and I went back to the chorus and stayed in the chorus. Although no one else was assigned to Carol Haney as an understudy. And about 3 months later, she was out again, and Hitchcock was there the night that I went on. You see what I mean? It was like a destiny, that little angel on my shoulder or something. Really, I feel that way.
She had that remarkable gamin quality. The actresses of that period were all rather lacquered. The hair was lacquered. The performances were lacquered. They were all very shiny and all lipsticked and fussed up to the teeth. Alfred Hitchcock didn't want that. What he wanted was young talent and removed from all the slickness. You saw at that time, anyway.
Hitch was wonderful. He didn't treat me or anyone else as though we were irrelevant. But he was so pixie-like and so intelligent and so discerning and funny. I loved the idea of working for Hitch, but that would have meant going on location with Hitchcock to Stowe, Vermont, and then going immediately to California. And I was going with a man named Steve Parker, who was an actor also in town. The moment I met him, I felt this touch of destiny, as though I had to marry him. And we decided to get married because it would mean if I didn't marry him then, I'd maybe not see him again. I used to eat with the makeup and hair people because they're the first people I saw in the morning and the last people I saw at night. I would tell them how it was going with my marriage. So they became my friends, but the AD came to me one day and said, "You mustn't eat with them. You must eat with the above-the-line people." I didn't know what above-the-line meant, but that means the creative people. The crew's over there, creative is over here. I don't know why. I would still eat with them. I did what I wanted, and I really don't know why.
My first picture was Trouble with Harry with John Forsythe, but it wasn't until she did a picture with Martin and Lewis called Artists and Models that she had the opportunity to sing and dance.
The most exciting and delightful star discovery of the year. Everybody says that Shirley's going far in pictures. Jerry thinks she's gone too far already.
And pow, overnight, Shirley MacLaine became one of our biggest stars.
It was kind of a dream come true for me because of my earlier years when I was a kid going to see Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis films. They were everything to me. But I was now thrust into a film which was their second to last film together, and there was some tension on the set. Jerry is a genius. He is a comic scientist.
Oh, I gotta get new soles.
And I loved his addiction to technology. But Dean was a little more human. The whole experience was, here are my childhood idols having tension between them, which was palpable. And yet they did the work, and they were both wonderful. And I saw, it's sort of like watching two parents break up. I felt bereft because I knew they weren't going to work together anymore.
Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis.
Who daubs and dabbles with the brushes, to the gals who look so fetching, to the guys who do the sketching.
After Artists and Models, Mike Todd called me. I had heard about Mike Todd, but I didn't have any idea what it was like to meet him. He was a whirlwind. And he said, "Okay, kid, I think you can play a campy Hindu." I said, "A Hindu? I can't play a Hindu. I'm Scotch-Irish. What do you mean?" "Campy, she's going to be campy." And all of the really good, high-class Hindus were fair. They had freckles and red hair. That's what he told me. But, you know, he could con you out of anything. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he had dyed my hair black, cast me in the part, and put me on a plane to go to Durango, Colorado, because they were waiting for me to shoot. I called Steve from Colorado and said, I'm in Around the World in 80 days.
Bringing to life Shirley MacLaine as the delectable, incomparable Aouda, Maharani of India.
It was on that picture that I learned how to light myself. Marlene Dietrich taught me. Showed me that the camera should be high and the light should be low, and she taught me about the fine gold chain trick, which is you put one half of a gold chain here and you take it under your chin and you put the other half up here, and that helps you with your double chin if you have one. I loved working on that picture, and then we went to Japan on Around the World in 80 days, and Steve, a large part of his life had been spent in Japan, so he felt like he was going home. And it was on that trip that I conceived Sachi, my daughter. After we finished 80 days, Steve had established a position in the country of being an impresario, so he would go back and forth from here to Japan and do work there, bring work here. I was more or less alone in Hollywood. The wonderful thing about that is that he didn't demand that I go there. Of course, I never would have anyway. One of the reasons we got married was we both felt that the other was free. And I really did require that. But I was essentially working all the time. And when Sachi was born, I got a nanny, a succession of them, by the way. That is very difficult when you're a working actress and you have a young daughter. I was mostly traipsing around the comedy landscape. Although A Hot Spell was just solidly a drama, but where I really learned to do the comedy and drama simultaneously was in Some Came Running.
Based on the second controversial novel by the author of the sensational and memorable From Here to Eternity. A standout performance by Shirley MacLaine.
You'll miss the bestest pals you ever had.
Dames.
The character of Ginny was so pathetic, and yet she had such courage and so much selflessness that it made you smile through your tears.
That was the day of Hollywood glamour. And on the scene came this gangly, shaggy-haired, red-headed woman with too much junk jewelry. But was so refreshingly simple and honest, no pretense. This was an amazing kind of debut.
Nobody never been this sweet to me before, Dave. And you're sober, too. Practically.
Sure.
Dave. Dave, be in love with me. Oh, I love you so much. I've never met anybody like you before in my whole life. Oh, I love you so awful, awful much.
When Frank saw the footage of what we had done on Some Came Running, he wanted to change the ending so that Ginny got in front of the bullet that was intended for him. And he said, let the kid die, maybe she'll get a nomination. He loved discovering new talent, and that's probably what went on with us. I learned so much from him and Dean. And the whole experience was, it was remarkable.
When she did the Martin and Lewis picture, she got to know Dean very well.
Hey, give me a little kiss.
Sound idea. It's constructive.
You
yeah.
wait right there, and I'll be there in a minute.
I'll wait for you.
And I think through Dean, got to know Frank Sinatra, and Sammy Davis Jr., and Peter Lawford, that whole right back, and it was only natural that they would take to her as she would take to them, because she was one of the guys. With all of that prettiness and that sexiness that she had, she was still one of the guys.
I was a mascot to them. I was like a pet. I wasn't like a woman. And I didn't even think of myself that way. I had this husband someplace, and I think I was more interested in working and how to develop these different channels for expression anyway. And I saw these men who were fantastic on the stage, and they could stay up all night in Las Vegas and do 2 shows a night and get up at 6 in the morning. All of that was very interesting to me, and their spontaneous humor and their camaraderie. I was really drawn to that. They were my teachers, and I was only 22. I think it was a very exciting, adventurous family, because I was essentially alone, and they all knew that. They protected me from some of the sharks in Hollywood. I couldn't have gone off and had a lascivious affair that would have ended up hurting me or gotten married 6 times if I had wanted to, because they were there to protect me more or less.
You know, something about her makes me want to just sort of like, you know, put my arm around her or something. I don't know what it is, and I'm not sure she even really knows what it is, but there's this incredible vulnerability that is in her face and her eyes and the way she carries herself. You can really see it in a movie she made called The Apartment.
Ingredient number 1, a very warm, very wonderful story about a boy, a girl, and a very special kind of problem.
Are we dressing for dinner?
You know, just come as you are.
So you're pretty good with that racket.
You should see my backhand. Where do you see me serve the meatballs?
Shirley has always been an instinctive actress. In other words, I might go home and beat a scene to death with a stick until I got it, whereas Shirley would let it go with how she felt, which is why she would like to do scenes, you know, in 2 or 3 takes, because they would be the most fresh, and very often that's true.
We never improvised a thing, and if one word was left out, the script girl would come leaping into the scene and say, no, cut. Oh, she drove me crazy, that girl.
There's a long scene early in the film where you first see Shirley. She's running the elevator, and the timing is extremely important. And Billy Wilder said, all right, we're going to do it in 1. And Izzy Diamond would be watching what you're saying. He'd be watching the text. So then Billy would come over, and Izzy would go, Billy would go, uh-huh. And he would come over, and he'd say, Shirley, you missed this, you missed that on the first page, and you missed this on the second page. Let's go again, please. Now, finally, about take 12, he made her do the whole damn thing again instead of just a pickup, because he didn't want to cut it anywhere in there. And from that day on, I want to tell you, Shirley came in, and she had that script. I think she knew my lines, her lines, everybody's lines.
You know, you're the only one around here who ever takes his hat off in the elevator.
Really?
The characters you meet. Something happens to men in elevators. Must be the change of altitude. The blood rushes to their head or something. Boy, I could tell you stories that would...
I'd love to hear them. Maybe we could have lunch in the cafeteria sometime. Or some evening after work.
27.
Oh,
I hope everything goes all right.
I hope so. Wouldn't you know they call me on a day like this, what with a cold and everything. How do I look?
Fine. Wait.
Thank you. You know, that's the first thing I ever noticed about you. When you were still in the local elevator, you always wore a flower.
Good luck. And wipe your nose.
We were, I guess, the safe duo on the screen. It was like high school sweethearts, I guess. We're maybe possibly 2 older sisters. I don't know. Wonderful men.
When I did 2 for the Seesaw, Shirley and Bob Mitchum really kind of sparked each other. They liked each other very much. And they used to rib and kid each other and had jokes going right and left, laughing and laughing. It was an arm stretch for her, playing this supposed Jewish girl from New York City. But she did it wonderfully well, I thought.
Brother, how long have you been on the wagon?
A year.
Where you been, in jail?
She can portray the various qualities that are needed in the character that she's portraying, because she is not herself a particularly vulnerable person. She's very forthright, very strong, and she knows her own mind.
I didn't think in terms of, would this be good for my career, or I don't like this scene, you'd better fix it. I never did very much of that. I just sort of went with the punches. Enjoyed the people I was working with. If I didn't enjoy anyone I was working with, there was no question in my mind. I'd just walk away. I was wearing a can-can dress that weighed 75 pounds, courtesy of Irene Sheriff. They asked Juliet Prowse and myself to do the can-can, which was choreographed for, I suppose, gold medal athletes, because when you do the can-can for the film, you can rest after each one of the turns. But they wanted us to do it all at once to entertain Khrushchev. I thought I would go into cardiac arrest. That's what I remembered that day. And then he wasn't too pleased when the press asked him, what did you think of the can-can? He said, I think the face of humanity is prettier than its backside. So they asked me what I thought of what he said, and I said, I think he's upset because we wore panties. Because in the old days in France, they didn't wear panties, and that was the whole point. When you kicked, that's what you saw. This feeling of life being more important behind the camera and around the camera than in front of the camera was always with me. I never felt empty in Hollywood. I think because things were going well, it afforded me the opportunity and the freedom to explore elsewhere. I never did it out of a sense of loneliness, although I was alone a lot. But I had a lot of love affairs during that time that took up a great deal of my emotional life. We had a marriage that respected that in one another. Steve was living in Japan, so he had his own relationships going. He used to try to get me to go to premieres with good-looking men, and I thought that was so silly. I would go in my convertible Plymouth and go up and do my interviews and walk along the red carpet and go out the ladies' room in the back and go home. You know, it was all such an obvious media grope.
I think the roles that attract Shirley the most, certainly the roles that she's very famous for, are roles in which the character is slightly victimized. She's the little man struggling against forces that are bigger than she is.
I remember Lou Wasserman asked me if I wanted to do charity, and I said, yes, I'd love to, and I think Bobby Fosse should direct it. He said, who's Bobby Fosse? And I said, he's a choreographer, but he's a great director. I just know it.
So full of rhythm, color, movement, life, it will set the musical comedy pace for years to come.
Hey, big spender!
That's Sweet Charity.
She's a friend, she's a harpsichord.
That's Sweet Charity. That's Sweet Charity. Starring Shirley MacLaine as
Charity. Charity Hope Valentine.
in the performance of a lifetime.
What you do in bed is your business.
You see, I wasn't even in bed. I was in the closet.
To each his own.
There is, again, another example of her ability to be vulnerable and funny at the same time. She somehow manages to do it in a way that she's smiling through the pain, which is a quality that again, makes her vulnerable and endearing. It's like she's trying to rise above the sadness of the situation at all times.
And I remembered that when I did Some Came Running, that if you really play the character truthfully, everything is the truth, then the comedy will be funnier and the drama will be sadder.
She has wit on the screen, and she has the ability to make us laugh without chasing cheap laughs. I mean, she's wry, she's dry, she's never overly sentimental. She's an artist.
I was never a sex symbol, and I was not a great beauty, so the character is what mattered to me. I had always wanted to do character parts. I guess basically that's what I was. I was a character actress rather than an ingenue or even a leading lady. I look for those aspects of human life that are authentic and real, regardless of whether they're attractive or not. Well, 40 is not an older person, you know, I don't think. But that's what happens to you in Hollywood. They seem to think of you as an older person when you're 40. The parts that I did around that period were the possession of Joel Delaney and desperate characters, but the scripts didn't work, the pictures didn't work. Anyway, I worked for George McGovern, whom I adored. I thought he was a very moral man. So that when scripts would come along, I would turn them down because I was working for McGovern. It was probably worth me giving up my career to try to defeat Richard Nixon, is the way I looked at that.
I met Shirley a long time ago when I first ran for the United States Congress, and she was interested in my strong positions. She was extremely selfless and generous in helping me in many ways. None of it was to put Shirley forward. She was forward without me. I was the beneficiary of her, obviously, her fame.
And then after that, I went to China. I was really interested in seeing this country that I had sat in a hotel room in Hong Kong and peered over the new territories and thought, what are they doing over there? And I took a women's delegation. I took about 8 to 12 people, including the crew, that came from all different walks of life. And the way they related to this revolution was what I filmed. I wanted to show what the revolution had perpetrated in relation to women. It's called the other half of the sky, which the Chinese refer to as the female of the species. They're the other half of the sky. My persona was my passport to go anywhere. I could go anywhere in the world, and did. I traveled all over the world by myself. And because I was who I was invited into all sorts of levels of society. By the time I got finished with politics in China, I don't think there was much career for me in Hollywood. So what I decided to do was return to my roots. And I went back to ballet class and put together an act.
I received a phone call. The voice at the other end said, "This is Shirley MacLaine." I felt sure one of my friends was playing a trick on me. Anyhow, she said that she was interested in doing an act in Vegas, that Gwen Verdon had recommended me. When Shirley decided to do a Vegas act, that was like a very brave step. I mean, you're one person, you're out there holding the entire evening. It's not even like playing a character or being in a play.
You have to find your stage identity. You have to really know who you are on the stage. You have to have lived a little, died a little, had your heart broken a little, been triumphant a little, failed a lot, and been able to have, I guess, experienced yourself in public. Then you know sort of who you are when you walk out there. It's called getting your stage legs, I think. And it's only really about who you are, not what you do. That's all they want to know, is who you are.
Shirley is not the best dancer in the business, the best singer in the business, but she proved that she's one of the best entertainers in the business.
Imagine me at the Lido, the most famous nightclub in the whole world, and I'm going to play it. I've played the Palace, and I've played the Dumps. I can do pliés, and I can do bumps. I've taken my bows, and I've taken my lumps. Lord help me, I loved it.
Shirley has this sense of reality that she shares with people. It's not a movie star pretension. It's just being one of the guys. She's in a beautiful gown, but there's no BS. She says what she thinks, and the audience gloms onto that. She's one of them.
When I read a script and my scalp tingles, I know I should do it. The one script that worked after I had reached that so-called of a certain age was The Turning Point. And that was about two women who had to face the decisions that they had made when they were younger and what that meant to them today. The character of Dee Dee was nothing of what I would have done. My character would have been more like Emma, who was the Anne Bancroft part. But I knew a lot of women who had made the decisions to give up the ballet and go and just become a mother and perhaps a teacher. like Dee Dee had done.
Shirley and I come from a tribe of people called dancers. Gypsies are known for their fortitude, for their humor, for their endurance, for their talent, and for their unflagging devotion to the show. She understood the frustration of the character. I thought she brought some very, very special gifts to the interpretation of Dee Dee. And the hunger that the character had for recognition, which is a very important part of Shirley's psychology. Still, she has this hunger for recognition.
Even though I was playing a part that I couldn't identify with. Just to be back in the world of the ballet, it swirled me back to my childhood and to my beginnings. I had such a structured family life in Virginia with the underlying reality that they didn't really want it, that they thought they should raise children this way, that I never really wanted a structured family life. I wanted unpredictability. I wanted each day to be different. As a result, my daughter is much more conservative than I am. And usually, children are more liberal than their parents. I would create the reality every minute that I found at my disposal, and I didn't very often do the same things twice. And I think I still live that way.
I think that she has not been the most conventional wife and mother in the world, but I think she had great feelings, both originally for her husband, as she still does for her daughter, but has always felt that the pivot to her personality was the capacity to share her work, her talent, her writing, her acting, her dancing, and her involvement in the things she deeply believed in. Shirley sees everything as a constructive experience. Even her marriage to Steve, which was, finally terminated and so on. Not many of us can do that, If there's been, reasons in our lives that we feel were unpleasant, we try to sort of forget about it. Shirley always incorporates it, sees it as some lesson to be learned, some experience that you had to go through, and that it helps to make you a stronger person.
Oh, my response to someone who has a life outside of acting is a very warm, positive response, because I think it is the most important philosophical way to live, that is to live beyond the camera, live beyond one's work, because for example, I'm not my work, I'm not what I do. I think it takes a lot of time and wisdom to learn that. I don't know Shirley that well, but I know she has an avid interest in everything. I think she's one of these actresses who've she moves within her personality, she moves within the age of her personality. She doesn't try to fight that. She's moved on since then, instead of, like many people, fighting the process of time. She just does it.
She's probably done 40, 45 features for almost every studio in town, and almost each part has been different and demanded a different portion of her talent on the screen, all the way from the Martin and Lewis pictures where she was romping around singing and dancing, to Terms of Endearment where she was a mother.
Oh, Mama, that's the first time I stopped hugging first. I like that.
Get yourself a decent maternity dress.
You have to get one in, didn't you?
The transition into being an older actress was not all that difficult. It really came down to where are the great parts, rather than what do I look like and what will they think of me.
This ability to access tremendous depth, so she could do a very poetic gesture that would convey a great deal, and make you feel a lot, like in Terms of Endearment, when Deborah Winger dies and she looks away it was heartbreaking.
Aurora Greenway personifies so many aspects of femaledom. You either know somebody like Aurora or think that you are Aurora. She's my favorite character.
How are you? It's not my fault, but I'm sorry.
He wanted to get me on my back. He just had to ask me.
It didn't have one note, it had many notes. And it had many opportunities to show a big range of talent, sadness, joy, happiness. It encompassed many qualities, all of which Shirley has, by the way. The minute I saw the picture, I knew she was going to get an Oscar.
Shirley's a very strange amalgamation. She came on the scene as a gamin, a waif. She refers to it as victim characters. We're aware of her political involvements, her feminist viewpoints, her metaphysical explorations. Through the press and books, we've seen her grow up. And there still is that original quality. However, she has become a very strong individual. She's outspoken, she's forthright. And if she keeps going, she could wind up like the character she plays in Steel Magnolias.
Maybe sometime I could arrange for us all to get together.
Maybe not.
Well, why not?
Shelby.
I managed in a few decades to marry the two most worthless men in the universe and then proceeded to have the three most ungrateful children ever conceived. The only reason people are nice to me is because I have more money than God. Now, I'm not about to open a new can of worms.
Weezer.
What?
If this is really how you feel, it isn't healthy. Maybe you should think about coming down to the guidance center and talking to someone. We're there to help.
I'm not crazy, Malin. I've just been in a very bad mood for 40 years.
I had written the screenplay. I'd adapted my play for the screen. And when they started rattling off the names, well, I think it's going to be Sally Field. I think it's going to be Daryl Hannah. I think it's going to be Julia Roberts. It's going to be Olympia DeCox. And it was going to be Shirley MacLaine. Everyone knows someone who's completely irascible, irritating, irrepressible, infuriating, and lovable. And that's who Shirley had come to my little hometown to play.
After making this decision that we would test to see what she looked like without makeup and a gray wig, I guess I'm a character actress now, she said to me. And she said, and if I'm going to do that, I got to go the distance. I got to go all the way. And so she did. Brave for an actress to work without any makeup.
All the men on Steel Magnolias, the crew and the above-the-line men, thought there would be a colossal catfight between the six of us. The opposite happened. We band together and understood each other in ways, without even speaking, that the rest of the crew couldn't comprehend. They all talked about it. We made friends on that film that exist to this day.
Miss Weezer. What? There's somebody that wants to see you. Who? I've opened the can of worms for you. What?
Hell. Owen Jenkins.
Hello, Louisa. Remember me?
My God, you look different. You shrunk.
You look terrific. You've hardly changed at all.
I'm not as sweet as I used to be.
When the cast of Steel Magnolias first arrived on the set, which was in my hometown, in Natchitoches, Louisiana, it was a really surreal experience. And there was a call, and this voice says, "This is Shirley MacLaine. I'm just over here at my house, and I was sitting out on the wharf, just not doing anything. I thought maybe you'd like to come over." It was Shirley's way of saying, "Okay, I'm here. I'm doing this film, this script that you wrote. I want to know everything." And And I believe I went over and we sat on the wharf, and we sat there for hours and hours, into the wee hours, just talking about every aspect of her character and life in this town. And she was doing her research, but she was also doing what Shirley does best, which is a seeker and a searcher.
I think that Shirley believes in magic. I mean, I think that she believes in, you know, that perhaps there are no coincidences, that there are no accidents.
Well, I think I've been a mystic since I was very young. I think I've always known there's something that is something I almost purposefully chose. I always felt that if I could get into sync with what the destiny was I chose, I would be happy. And I've relatively done that. That's got nothing to do with religion or nothing to do with... it's a kind of spiritual knowing that resides at the bottom of one's own identity.
I think Aurora Greenway is one of the great heroines of film. She is a mass of contradictions. She has extremely strict morals, but then, of course, will bend them when they need to be bent. I think that's one of the reasons that she must be such a joy for Shirley to play, because it's an opportunity for an actress to express absolutely every trait of a human being.
I think Aurora will probably be on my tombstone. Love her. And to go from Terms of Endearment and how many people identified with that whole dysfunctional family to Evening Star, you know, 15 years later, and how she's facing how she has not done a good job in raising the grandchildren, but also cannot understand the pain that young people seem to be going through because she is so indomitable.
If your mother had lived, she would be so horrified at the way you turned out.
If my mother had lived, I wouldn't have turned out this way.
How much younger is she than you?
Much.
At least you found the great love of your life.
Come on, don't give me that. You've had great loves. Her loved great. Whatever.
Well, the love that I felt and the love that they felt somehow didn't coincide. But I'm still looking.
There she is. The evening star. She shines first, she shines brightest, and she shines longest.
I think I've always fashioned my life in a way that didn't have boundaries and didn't have restrictions. That's the brilliance of trust and taking it day by day. And I think I feel that I go day by day with everything, moment by moment with everything. That's the secret I've learned. You can't make any kinds of plans, basically. Life is what happens to you while you're making other plans.
If they could see me now, that little gang of mine, I'm eating fancy chow and drinking fancy wine. I'd like those stumble bums to see for a fact the kind of top-drawer, first-rate chums I attract. All I can say is, wow, look where I am. Tonight I landed, pow, right in a pot of jam. What a setup, holy cow. They'd never believe it if my